So we'll start with JavaScript. How you give a comment statement in JavaScript, it's already shown on the screen. This is for a single line comment. If you want to go in for a block line comment, you give like this. So this is a block line comment. So you can have multiple lines. You can give a comment statement like this. That's a block line comment. And JavaScript, when it was invented in 1995. So it's a very old programming language. So for the last 25 years, lot of changes and revisions has happened to JavaScript. So we'll be focused on learning JavaScript version ES6. That is, in 2015 we got this version, and we'll be focusing on learning this version. What do you mean by a version? A version that is released whenever you have new methods, new features getting added to the language. So in ES6, they added some of the concepts to JavaScript like arrow methods, map function, objects, and things like that. Why we are focusing on ES6 is because React, we are going to learn React. To master React, we have to know JavaScript ES6. So we'll be learning JavaScript ES6 version. And first thing, when you talk about any programming language, what is that we look at? Variable declaration. How you declare a variable, that's how we start. And for this we use three types of keywords. One is where, another keyword is let, and another keyword is constant. To declare any variable in Java, how did you declare any variable? You said int, you said string. So we were just giving the data type of that variable. Here we are just going to use these three keywords where. So we can say where k is equal to 23. Now, the data type for k is nothing but an integer. In JavaScript, you call that to be a number. So whatever value you assign to that variable, this variable takes that specific data type. See, I can also go with another declaration. Variable g is equal to 10.5. Now this is like decimal value, float value. So automatically g will be taking up the data type float. So we are not going to mention whether it is integer, character, string in specific. We are just going to assign it. How will you assign a string? Variable, say name, or else I say n is equal to, I'll give my name here. So Satish. So you can give strings within single quotes or double quotes. So you can declare string like this. You can also declare string like this. And every statement can end with a semicolon. Semicolon is not mandatory in JavaScript, but they say it's a good programming practice to have statements ending with a semicolon so that you know where exactly a statement ends. So I'll be using semicolon in all my coding. So you can also use semicolon. So this is how you declare a string. It can be in double quotes or it can be in single quotes. So you can declare variables like this. Not only this, you can also just directly give, say, some b is equal to 43. So even without var, let, and constant, you can also directly give b is equal to 43. This is auto declaration. But we'll be looking at usage of var, let, and constant. Did you all understand how to declare variables using this keyword var? Okay. So likewise, we'll also use let and constant. But even before going to let and constant, we'll understand more about var. So we'll see when to use var. Var is actually it is a part of older version of JavaScript. So unless and until you are using very old browser versions, you are not supposed to use var. Var is like outdated thing. So we will not be using var. And one more thing, JavaScript is case sensitive. So if the method starts with some capital letter, if it's going to have some caps, you have to be very cautious about that. JavaScript is case sensitive. So where we have seen where it is like something to deal with older versions of the browser, it's an outdated way of declaring variables. But still, we look at something about where. See, you declare something like variable k is equal to 23, and where is not going to have any local scope. It is not going to have any local scope. What is not going to have any local scope? You know, local scope and global scope of variables, right? Say if I put this declaration inside two parentheses. Now I declare a variable. Variable k is equal to 26. Two variables I have declared. Variable k to be 23, variable k to be 26. So this variable, what is the scope of this variable? We assume that the scope is within these two parentheses. We believe that we cannot access this outside these two parentheses, right? But where is not going to have any local scope. So you can very well access this outside the parenthesis too. So let's print this. For printing to the console, the command is console.log and you can give the variable name. Now to run this in VS Code, you can press Ctrl Alt 10. So you will get your code running. So you're seeing 26 getting printed here. See, initially we had 23. Next we initialize that to 26. But you are able to access this variable outside the scope, outside that local scope. So this variable, when you declare a variable with var, it's not going to have any local scope. Understood this? What is the value getting printed? You see on the right side 26. So you are able to access this variable outside the scope. I didn't tell you how to run this code, right? So you open a .js file. So in VS Code, you create .js file. I have given some file name here, student.js. You can create a .js file. And then you directly type the code. Console.log, you can type like this. There's a shortcut for this, CLG. Then you press enter, then you give that. After you finish coding, you can very well press Ctrl Alt 10 so that you get the output. Were you all able to get this output 26? So we'll look at few more properties of var. That is, you can always reinitialize this. For instance, let me delete this. See, you can always reinitialize it like this. Variable k is equal to 26. You can reinitialize, redeclare. So when you talk about var, you can redeclare. You can always redeclare within the same scope. You understood what is that I'm trying to say here? I can very well redeclare this variable. I'm also reinitializing it to some other value. This is permitted. Even if I have it inside some parenthesis, I can go and very well declare it like this. Variable k is equal to 28. Variable k is equal to 29. This is allowed. You can redeclare it within the same scope. Let it be global or local. Now what will be the output here? The output here will be 29. If you want to clear your console, there's an icon on the top. When you click on this, your console will be clear. So this is about where what all things we have seen here. You can very well redeclare. You can reinitialize. While you are declaring, no need to initialize it. See, I can also perform like this. Variable k semicolon. I'm not initializing it while I'm declaring. Maybe in the next step, I'll initialize it. We can also perform that in 2 steps. This is also permitted. So you can declare it without initialization, and in the next step you can initialize it. You can always redeclare it and reinitialize it. And one more important property is it is not going to have any scope. It's not going to have any local scope. And final thing that we are going to see is this is only for older browsers. It's like pretty outdated concept. We will not use var. Now let us move to the, so how to declare variables if you are not going to use var. Let's take a look at let. So the next concept we are going to see is let. So when you are declaring a variable, we say let and then k is equal to 23. So while you are declaring, you can initialize it like var. You can also just declare it like this and initialize it like this. This is also allowed. And one more important thing, let has got local scope. You cannot access any variable declared with let outside two parentheses. So let's declare this. See, let me put let k equals to 24. See, here k is 23, it's in the global scope. Here k is 24, it's in the local scope. If I print k, now what will be the value printed is 23, because this value you cannot access that outside the two parentheses. So let's run this. Control S for saving, Control Alt N. So you can nice. See what is the value getting printed? 23. That's because 24 we cannot access it outside the two parentheses. If you want to access 24, I should just print that inside that scope. So here it is k. Now what will be the output? 24 will be printed, 23 will be printed. Let's run this, save it and run it. So you can see 24 is accessible only within that scope, and 23 is global scope that's accessible outside. So difference, important difference between where and let us got local scope, where doesn't it doesn't have local scope. Otherwise, all the other properties are the same. See, I can very well initialize it while I'm declaring, or I can initialize it after declaring. But this is not allowed. You cannot redeclare a variable using let within the same scope. See, I cannot perform this. Why I cannot perform this? I am redeclaring k within the global scope. Did you understand what I was trying to say? See, let k is equal to 23 is having global scope. So you cannot redeclare k again in the global scope. Likewise, I cannot redeclare k here again in the local scope too. This is not allowed. But this is allowed. K is equal to 23, that's in the global scope. This is in the local scope. So this is treated as a different variable. This is treated as a different variable. You cannot access this outside that scope. Are you clear with let? So we are going to use let when you are going to use declarations, variable declarations in JavaScript. But never be confused. You cannot redeclare using let within the same scope, and let has got local scope. You cannot access any variable outside the parenthesis, outside the specific scope. Now let's move on to the next keyword for declaration, constant. Constant, the name says it's a constant. You cannot change it. So how will you declare any constant? Const k, and it is mandatory to declare or initialize it while you're declaring. So it is mandatory to initialize it while you're declaring. Important. You cannot perform that like this. You cannot say constant k is equal to 33. This will lead to an error. See, it's throwing an error already. Declarations must be initialized. So when you use constant, you should immediately initialize it. Mandatory. And like let, constant is also having local scope. It behaves like let, except for the fact that you cannot reassign any other value to this. See, I said constant k is equal to 33. I can't perform k is equal to 34 again. I cannot reassign a value because it's a constant. So when I try to run this code, what will happen? Control S, Control Alt N, you'll get a reference error, type error, assignment. It's a type error, assignment to constant variable. So you cannot reassign any value here. And it has got local scope. That is, I can declare k here again. That is allowed because this variable is available only within that local scope. And I can print this CLG, it's like k. And I can also print the global scope variable k. Now what will be the output? You will see 29 and 33. 29 and 33. You cannot redeclare it. You cannot reassign some values. Within the same scope, I cannot redeclare this. This will be an error. definitely. I can't even assign any value. This is also an error. You'll get type error. So you understood the difference between where, let, and constant. Okay, so the key differences with respect to the local scope and global scope, and also with respect to initialization, declaration, and assignment. That is possible in JavaScript. That is, you can assign some value to a variable like this, and you can print that X I'm printing. Uh, and we can declare this. So you can use a variable and then declare it, but this is possible only with this data declaration where you can try this with let. Let will throw you an error. Like when you try that with let, it will throw a reference error. You cannot use a variable declared with let before initializing it. Whereas with where, this is going to work. So let's run this. So you will get 5 printed out. See, 5 is getting printed out.